Hello and welcome to today's video on Covenant C2, a .NET-based command and control framework designed for red teaming operations and post-exploitation tasks. Developed by Ryan Cobb, it aims to highlight vulnerabilities within the .NET environments and facilitate the use of offensive .NET tradecraft. In this video, I'll explore the Covenant C2 framework, configure and start a listener, infect a host with payload or launcher, also called a launcher, get a reverse shell or a grunt, and run some commands, also called tasks or taskings. Covenant can run on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, and it also supports Docker for containerized deployments. If you're looking for their GitHub, I'll have this in the video description for you to browse. Um, One thing that I will add here that while I was trying to install Covenant from its repository here, I came across many issues. Um, I tried installing Covenant on a fully updated and upgraded Ubuntu desktop with all the prerequisites installed, and it still failed. Um, I also noticed that this repository is quite a bit old. They stopped developing this, and also noticed that there are quite a few issues here if you browse here. And I browsed quite a bit this section to be able to resolve the issues that I had. Luckily for me, after some extensive research, I was able to find out this repository here for by Mr. MP. And what he had developed was an option to install Covenant on a Raspberry Pi 4, which luckily I own. And this was a very straightforward installation, and it just worked right out of the box. And this is what you're seeing here today, and this is what we'll be using for this demo video. Um, Now, initially, when you get to the screen, the login screen, it will prompt you for a new username and to type in the password twice. I've already done that, so I'm just going to go ahead and log in. Um, and just to expand a little bit more on the functionality of Covenant, as you well see, Covenant features a web-based interface which supports multi-user collaboration, which allows multiple team members to operate simultaneously and coordinate their efforts effectively. Um, what else? I'm just checking my notes here. Um, just wanted to extend a big thank you to whoever put this script together. It really helped me a lot, and yeah, thank you for this. Um, as you see here, this is a fresh install of the. Even though I've played with this and I've cleaned everything up, it's has been erased, and it's similar to a fresh install. What you see here is that there are no grunts, no listeners, and no taskings or tasks. What's a listener? So a listener is the option that handles the incoming connections from compromised systems. The compromised systems are called grunts. So this is where once you get a reverse shell, this is where you would see that reverse shell or shells if you have multiple, especially in the case of a red teaming team that they're all logging into this platform. Listeners can be configured, and this option we'll see under profiles. The listeners can be configured for HTTP, HTTPS, and other protocols. Um, as far as grunts, like I said, these are the agents that are um, running on the remote victim machines, and this is They'll be waiting on the remote side to receive commands from the console from us. So grunts that effectively communicate back to the Covenant server via the listeners that we'll be setting up, right? Let's see, checking my notes here again. What's a task in a module? So Covenant has pre-built tasks that in modules that we can execute via the grunt agents. These are extensively covered here. There are quite a few here. I will not go through them for the brevity of this video. Um, they have, you also find here post exploitation, options for credential dumping, lateral movement, and data exfiltration, and so much more. So let's set up our first listener and get this going. Um, so what is a listener? A listener is basically a piece of code that just listens in, excuse the pun, for a grunt to call home from a compromised host, like I said, and give us our reverse shell. The listener makes use of listener profiles, like I showed, which can be customized on how we want our C2 channels to communicate um, and look like during the HTTP GET and HTTP POST requests. So if we're to open one of these up, you'll see here many options that you can configure yourself. And these options, as far as the user agent, these can be found online. Plenty of options out there. Instead of you can have for the HTTP response headers, whatever, you can change the option here. Instead of Microsoft IS, you can use Apache, for instance. Here's where you see what the HTTP post request will look like, and down below you'll see the HTTP GET response. And these are all customizable as you see. They're open for any kind of editing that you feel like. Um, Multiple options can be created. So if we come back here, we want to create a new one. Basically, we have the option here to create our own and not modify sort of the defaults that we have here. So let's create the listener. So I'm going to hit create here. What you'll notice here is that the name is very random, and this can be hard to remember, especially during a pen test and the everything that's happening in a pen test. So you probably want to use something more intuitive here. Now, when I've worked with this, I use just a domain name, and this can be used in case. And this would be your kind of your domain callback kind of. So your grunt will be using this domain to call back to. So you want to use something like www dot I don't know whatever mydomain.com, especially if you have multiple red teamers or purple teamers using this. You probably want to be able to differentiate between the listeners. You'll be using these listeners to create your launchers. So you'll get a drop down, um, and you'll choose the listener name and so on. So uh, moving on to the bind address. Um, the bind address is the local IP address that the listener will bind to. This can be helpful in cases where the Covenant host has multiple network cards. But usually this value will be 0 across the board. The bind port is the local IP address of is the local port that the listener will bind to. This also represents the port option of the URL. So whether it's 80 or 8080 or 443, whatever your listener will be listening on. Now, given that I will not be using like a public IP address such as my home or AWS or GCP or whatever, we're going to use this just internally. In this case, my IP address is of my listener will be um, the IP address of where I have this installed. Unless, I mean, I can use anything else. I can use a Kali box. I can use with a netcat listener there. I mean, this can be anything, right? We will not be using SSL, even though this is an option that we have available. I will not be demoing the usage of an SSL certificate in this case to encrypt our traffic and and evade sort of the blue teamers. And here's where we would probably get our custom options for the HTTP profiles that I talked about. In this case, we're just going to use the default one. And we're going to hit create here. Let's see, just checking one more time to make sure I have everything that I need. And we're going to hit create here. So one thing that I want to mention here is that sometimes, depending on the system, this status here will say uninitialized, or and it will take several seconds or minutes to actually become active. In my case, my Raspberry Pi works really well. It's basically the only C2 that it's running and the only function that it has, so it became active really quickly. Checking my notes here again. Um, we've created a listener, so we're moving on to a launcher. So what is a launcher? A launcher are the techniques that we have available to help us infect, if you will, hosts um, through um, payloads of our choice. Each payload has its advantages and inconveniences, and it's highly customizable, right? So I'm sure you recognize your binary here options, your PowerShell, your MS builds, uh, and so many other, like your regsurf or running a DLL file, um, whatever you have built in your as your sort of your once you get a full foothold on the system, and to for persistence or whatnot. So um, the communication methods within the Covenant frameworks are configured through templates. I'll be back to the launchers in just a minute here. I just want to cover the templates really quick. Um, the main ones that you see here are HTTP and SMB. There's some other options here as well. And while the HTTP protocol is the sort of the main communication protocol, the SMB protocol can be configured to communicate between two grunts. Okay, we'll talk about grunts more uh, soon. Um, and a bridge effectively is just an HTTP template with very specific outbound settings. I haven't played with this yet, so I'm guessing it's all going to come down to the code that we have here. You can certainly copy these in a notepad um, or any platform that you use for development, and inspect and read the code to understand better what it does. Moving back to launchers, we'll choose in this case a PowerShell since it's so straightforward. Under listener here, you will see the domain, right? If you had multiple domains because of multiple engagements and team members using this platform, you'd see a lot more listeners here. Depending on your needs, you'd probably use the Grunt HTTP, the .NET 4.0 being the latest available, I guess, in Covenant. Like I said, this is 3 to 5 years old. This is a 3 to 5 years old platform. Hasn't been updated, um, so it's probably on its way out and soon to become obsolete. Um, we're not going to use, like I said, a certificate or validate any kind of certificate. So we're going to have these as false, nor are we going to pin any kind of certificate to this launcher. We can take the defaults here as far as the delays and the jitter. We can specify a kill date. Now, Today is August 5th, 2024, so I can set it up for, let's say, Saturday or something like that, 5 p.m. And then I can choose different PowerShell parameters here depending on my needs. But we'll just take the defaults and I'll just hit generate here, and this should populate pretty quickly. I can download this and it will download as a PowerShell script that if we look at um, and we choose to open this with, we'll take Notepad. Um, this is what the code looks like. Basically, this is generated by Covenant. Um, Otherwise, we're just going to choose the launcher. I'm sorry, the this PowerShell strings here, and we're just going to hit copy. Now, given that I'm already in RDP on a victim's machine, I'm just going to use this machine for the PowerShell. I'm going to minimize this and close this since I don't need it. And if I start the PowerShell command prompt here and I paste the whole code here and hit enter, I should see on the grunt side a connection from this system. So I'm running in the context of victim. My host name is Win10 Pro. I have several Windows 10s, 10 VMs in my testing environment, so that's why you see Pro 3. You see that it's a grunt HTTP. Status is active. We can actually interact with it by clicking on it. And we'll see here kind of the options that we have pre-selected and that it was able to discover from the host where we ran this grunt on. So you'll see here the IP address of the VM. You'll see here the host name of it. You'll see here the Windows version that I have. And then we have additional options here. Now this option here, I thought this would be sort of modifiable. Now without some automation or some scripting or something, I doubt this can be easily changed by us. So we're just going to take the default. And if we interact here with the grunt and we want to send over some commands, we can do a who am I, right? And says the grunt was tasked, and we should get the response in just a minute here. And sure enough, this is my domain that I have, and this is the victim user account that we're running under. And checking my notes again for the next commands that I want to run here. We can get a get domain group in this case um, to obtain information about the domain admins, right? Get domain group, command submitted, uninitialized task. And here we see information on the domain group. And the password was last set, which is not right, but yeah, nonetheless, this is the information that is there. There's quite a bit actually of information. Um, as it's giving me information on each account that is part of the domain admins group. There's quite a bit to scroll here. Certainly, I'm sure there's useful information there. We can do a get net logged on user, and it should give me information for the currently logged on user. and we see according to the domain and the server. I'm going to copy this because I'm probably going to um, query for it to get some information about the domain controller. We see here um, a lot of information on the currently logged on users. Like I said, I have multiple systems out there, all with logged on users. And what else can we do here? So we can also do a process list, right? And get a list of currently running services under the victim account. Maybe we can use this for uh, persistence or for injection, privilege escalation, etc. Um, Again, I'm checking my notes. Um, we can also come to tasks here, and if we don't know the commands by heart, and we can just browse a big list of commands that we want to run here. So for instance, let's say we want to see, we see here the net get net logged on user and get domain group and so on. We can also do we can impersonate a process. Um, let's say since I have a domain name, can I do what can I do with that domain name or that domain controller? Um, let us see. I don't think we can run curb roast. The last time that I did this, I got some error messages from Covenant. I didn't really dig into it too much, but it's probably because the current victim account is running with reduced administrator permissions. So maybe not a way to do any kind of curb roasting. Um, we can do a get domain compare, and here's where we can specify the actual server name and get some information on this domain controller by hitting task. And the tab switches over um, to the interact portion of it, and then we see quite a bit of information on this domain controller um, and so on. Additionally, if you want to see a list of all the sort of the jobs or the tasks that you've sent over the grunt, you can see all of these here. Um, what else? What else? We can do additionally, we can come to interact here and we can do a net users domain, for instance, for a list of all, looks like command is not recognized. So what we can do here instead of this up arrow work, yes it does. We can start this with a shell net user domain. Let's see if this works. And looks like it's going to be able to process this at the domain controller and give us a list of users or mock users at least that I have in the domain. Checking again my notes. Again, we should be able to see the same commands here. Looks like we're only seeing the successful commands. We're not seeing the command where I only had the net user domain, which is good. Um, I mean, the options here are limitless, and I'll leave this to you to continue exploring. This is it for my video. Look out in the description for additional links, um, and hit the subscribe button or the like button if you found this video useful during your learning journey. Talk to you soon. Have a good one.